One. Another edition of First Person, again sponsored by the Crystal Room in Troy. Call Jessica Brown at 552-7680 in Troy to schedule your next event, big or small. Their motto is events perfected, for parties, for reunions, for graduations, weddings, whatever you'll enjoy. The staff, the amenities, but most of all, the convenience of the Crystal Room, located right there in Troy, in the heart of Miami County, just off I-75, across from the Kroger Plaza. Give them a call. Again, 552-7680, the Crystal Room in Troy. In the 5 years that we have done First Person, we have never sat down, taken the opportunity with one of the area's JV coaches, and I don't think there's one of more renown in terms of particularly girls basketball than our guest this afternoon, and that's Phil Barhorst from Fort LORAMIE High School. And Phil, it's good to have this time with you, and I particularly want to talk about some of the success that you've had here, and as well as the importance of the developmental importance of having good JV foundation for kids that go on to the varsity level.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. You know, when I first started coaching 7 years ago, I felt that, you know, it was all about teaching the kids how to win and everything, but I soon found out and learned that I feel that at this point it is my job to get the kids ready for the next level. In other words, get them ready for the varsity level. We've been very fortunate here to have good kids, come from good backgrounds, and that's helped make my job a lot easier.
You also have the advantage here, Phil, of coming from a winning tradition, because you've won state titles here in boys basketball and girls basketball and volleyball, baseball. Bill Sturwald's won twice in baseball. And, you know, 2 of the last 3 years in girls basketball here, you've won the Division IV title. And that expectation goes a long way toward making your job easier.
It does, but in a sense it makes it harder too, because there's the kids coming back, the expectations are very high, and they sometimes feel the pressure, and that's where some of our job comes in, to try to help relieve that pressure a little bit, to help things along a little bit. So
for the sake of adding relevance to that statement, you just, and I think this number was broken, or the string was snapped last year, won 62 consecutive games as a JV coach here at Fort LORAMIE with your girls. I don't know if that's any kind of record or not, given that it's junior varsity basketball, but that's a tremendous accomplishment. 62 consecutive games at any level. It
was an enjoyable run. You know, again, I don't take a lot of the credit for that. I've had great kids, and you know, when you drive around this community and you see all the basketball rims up and everywhere, and the kids are using them, and it's just they've got a good foundation. You know, we've got a great program. The junior high program is solid. I mean, we've got good kids coming through the system.
Phil Barhorst, the JV coach here at Fort LORAMIE, where girls basketball is our guest today, and I want to take a moment and just talk a little bit about a comment that I made earlier this week in a column, our midterm column on area basketball, about requisite skills to be successful. And I don't think anybody, it's no secret, when you go to the average basketball game now, you see shooting percentages in decline over what they used to be. People who've watched the game for a long time complain about fundamentals, passing, rebounding, boxing out, things like that, ball handling, dribbling. Tell me where your particular attitude about skills and skill development, and is it in decline, and what has to be done to bring that back?
Well, one of the things that we go through more so now than ever, and that is that, you know, every sport is year-round, and we have to deal with that. We have to share athletes. That's true. I've always felt that athletes are athletes. They should be able to flip a switch from one sport to the other, and we have to share athletes. And here at Fort LORAMIE, we've been very fortunate that everybody works together within the system. As far as you know, the skill sets for these kids and teaching them, and our practices, I can remember when I went to practice every day, you know, through high school and stuff. Our practices are very structured here. They're very structured, and that is, if we've got an hour and a half practice, the first hour and 15 minutes are pretty much structured. Everybody is working on the same skill sets, the same thing. The last 15 minutes of practice, I'm working with my JV kids, and Carla's working with her varsity kids, and that structure, I think, helps us immensely.
But you also have to make, and you mentioned this a moment ago, the fact that kids playing basketball commitment 12 months out of the year. They say teams are made from November on, but skills and players individually are developed during the summer and the off months. Are kids playing enough basketball now, whether it be AAU or summer league or whatever? Isn't that the essence of skill development?
Yeah, it is, but again, they're tossed between a couple different sports, I think, and you have now kids today that are more dedicated to one sport or the other. Yes, they love playing two sports. Yes, they love playing three sports. But their focus may be, by the time they get to be a sophomore or junior, their tendency is to run off to one other, maybe going off into specializing in a sport.
Everybody wants to be a varsity player. And I have to believe, from my own experience 40 years ago, that one of the toughest things is to sit down with a kid and say, hey, look, you're not good enough to play varsity yet. You need to be here. You need to buy your time. You need to put the work in to develop these skills, to get better, to get more competitive. How do you handle the kid who mentally or emotionally just is the disappointment of saying, you're not a varsity player yet, you've got to play JV?
Well, it gets a little difficult, especially in a program like ours, because it takes a special person to be a varsity player here.
Success.
We expect success. We expect, Coach has a thing where, we'll teach you and we'll go through things, but, we don't need to be going through it 2 and 3 times. There's too many things that we need to move on to, and we've worked and worked and worked with kids. There's always going to be a different attitude about things. There's always that kid that is hurt by, maybe having to move down a little bit, and there's other kids that accept it. For myself, thinking back on my playing days, I was cut as a 7th grader, 8th grader, 9th grader, and I got a varsity suit as a sophomore. It's what you get out of it, what you want to put into it, and that's what we strive to get the kids to do, is to work harder.
I've seen you at the state tournament in 13 and 15 when you won your 2 titles here, and watching you particularly, I see some moist eyes at the trophy presentation, and I know what you were thinking. These are the girls that you taught the game. These are the ones that you took in here as freshmen and helped get them to that point, and that had to be a special point for you, even though you're not the varsity coach. That had to be a special moment.
Well, it does, and you're very right. You caught me. You caught me, but Coach asked me when I took this job, and I'll revert back to that. The one thing she asked me, she said, why do you want to coach? Why do you want to coach? And my answer was, it kind of caught me off guard at first. My answer was simply this. I said, I've always wanted to coach, but I just felt that it wasn't right to do it while my kids were coming through the system. So I had the opportunity to get into it after my kids were through the system. And my answer to her to that question was, if I can have one positive effect on one kid, I would consider myself successful. Little did I know what a profoundly positive effect these kids would have on me.
Yeah.
And that's why you see what you see at the state tournament.
Yeah. And you're not alone. I see that in a lot of coaches, a lot of schools, every division, doesn't matter, small school, big school. It's a very special story, as is Phil Barhorst here, because I think when you look around every successful program, boys or girls, in this area, in the state of Ohio, they always say behind every good man there's a good woman, or a better woman. Behind every successful varsity coach, there's a guy like you back there developing those kids, and that's a great story. I congratulate you. 62 wins in a row. That's a heck of a number.
Great group of kids.
Do you ever pinch yourself and say, this is going to end someday? Obviously it is, but was there pressure to just keep it going, keep it going?
I remember that night. That night we lost, and the streak was broken. as I'm walking to the locker room, I'm thinking, what are the kids thinking right
Yeah.
now? And I went in and took the blame for not having them prepared. You know, I just felt that it was a close game, you know, and we lost. I wanted to take the pressure off of them, and there were some things we could have done better, obviously, but I said, this isn't on me. You know, I didn't have you prepared, and you could just almost see the sigh of relief on the kids, and you know, we went on from there.
And
So,
you know, that story got around about the 62 wins, and I've heard people say that may be the most impressive streak that I've heard of, or anybody's heard of in the area of sports, because it's not varsity, it's JV kids that are coming up just learning the game that you do with. So special accomplishment.
well, I remember back the very first year I coached, and we talk about that now, that, you know, you have your freshmen will play, you know, you bring freshmen in. Well, my first year, I started 4 freshmen, and those 4 freshmen were state champions in 2013. I mean, tell me how the system works. It's great kids.
That's why the man comes to work. Phil, great job.
Thank you.
Continued success. Thanks for your time today. That wraps up this week's edition of First Person with Phil Barhorst, again brought to you by the Crystal Room in Troy. Call Jessica Brown to schedule your next event, big or small. Again, 552-7680 on West Market Street in Troy. For Coach Barhorst and the sponsors, our thanks again to you for your support of high school sports on PressProsMagazine.com. We'll see you again next time with another edition of First Person.